If you will it, it is not a dream. My parents first found out about my deafness when I was 18 months old, and whatever the cause was, at the time, there was no cure. After 1.5 years of hearing and even speaking, I was diagnosed as profoundly deaf. And in my mother's mind, there were no such thing as deaf children. As she said, she had no idea what she and my dad could do. They were devastated. My parents sought the advice of several specialist doctors. Several of them suggested that I should be sent to a school for the deaf hundreds of miles away. And my parents did that. They visited a number of schools. They were all great institutions, all over the Midwest. But at the end of every visit, they asked the same question, the same one. Who would put Marlee to sleep each night and say, I love you? Aww. And the doctors, they had no answers. So, rather than send me to a school hundreds of miles away, they decided to keep me at home and send me to schools right in the neighborhood. Every day, they opened the door and they encouraged me to explore. They allowed me to be independent and let me meet new kids on my own. And yes, I was different, and oftentimes kids in the neighborhood could be cruel. But to my parents, that was all a part of growing up, deaf or not. Some call it determination, some call it guts, but us Jews have another word for it. Chutzpah. This idea that I could do anything, despite what barriers were out there, were traits that I got from my parents. But it was my mother who helped me discover my love for acting. Because she saw acting as the perfect outlet for her deaf daughter, who loved to sit with a Judy Blume book in her hand, devouring every single word, or who would like to sit in front of the bathroom mirror, performing stories with magical characters who, not surprisingly, signed back. Because in my world of books and magical mirrors, there were no barriers, and all my dreams could come true. Eventually, my mother found a more productive outlet for me, and that was a small community theater that served both hearing and deaf children, right near our house. And by the time I was 12, I had become a pro. I had done songs and stories in sign language all throughout the area. And one day, at the center, I found out that Henry Winkler, who was also known as the Fonz, and who was the most famous person in America, even more famous than President Carter at the time, was paying a visit. And I insisted on meeting him. So after my performance, I went right up to him, and I said, "Hi, I'm Marlee, and I want to be a famous actor in Hollywood just like you." You know, my bags were practically packed. I was ready to go. But just as Henry was about to speak, my mother took Henry aside and told him, though it was good to encourage Marlee, it might be a good idea not to encourage me too much. And you know, I think about it, as a mother, I know exactly what she was trying to do. She was trying to protect me. Because in her mind, the reality was that nobody in Hollywood would ever give me a chance. There was so much about appearances. No one would ever give me the opportunity to succeed. What my mother didn't know was that Henry Winkler had his own barriers growing up. Because as a young boy, Henry had difficulty reading in school, and his teachers told him that he was stupid and that he would never amount to anything. And it wasn't until many years later that Henry found out that he was dyslexic. So, despite the dire predictions, Henry persevered, and he fought for himself. And eventually he chose a path to success, acting. And in the end, Henry Winkler went on to achieve greatness beyond anyone's wildest dreams. So, there was Henry, listening to my mother in his polite Henry Winkler way. And after he was done, Henry turned around, knelt down, looked me straight in the eye, and said, like the Fonz, "Marlee, sweetheart, you can be whatever you want to be. Just believe in yourself and follow your heart. You do that, Marlee, and your dreams will come true. And 9 years later, I found myself standing on a stage with an Academy Award in my hand.